I think what was happening in most households is that parents were so hopeful that they were the ones who were encouraging you to feel that the opportunities were there. It was believed if you work really hard and you're very good, someone has to give you an opportunity.
In 1951, dancer Janet Collins inspired a generation of black ballet students when she became the first African American to join the Metropolitan Opera Company.
I saw her one time. My mother took me. Here was a black dancer on stage, a black dancer on point, doing the classical ballet, the epitome of dance. There was this pride and surprise.
American children in growing numbers studied ballet, a dance form that combined the influences of 17th century.
I grew up in Philadelphia, and I did all my dreaming in the movies, and I used to see all the musicals, and I just got the notion when I saw Sid Charisse that I wanted to be a ballet dancer. That was the thing that captured me most. Just loved the way she moved, and I imagined that I could do that.
At age 14, Dolores Brown won a scholarship to study with Marion Sujet, a light-skinned African-American dancer and teacher.
She recognized Dolores Brown's talent, and Miss Sujet had this agenda. Her agenda was, through the vehicle of Dolores Brown, to develop the first black ballerina to dance in a white ballet company.
Ballet, for me, took me somewhere else. It was something that I had a gift. I worked hard, not because I had to work at the technique really hard, but because I just loved accomplishing things.
After 2 years, Sujet took Brown and several of her other gifted students to study dance in New York City.
The first partnering class we had was heartbreaking for us because none of the men would step forward and partner us. Marion Sujet said, "Okay, girls, we will partner each other, and we will learn all we need to learn, and we'll take it back and show it to our guys at home." We weren't leaving, and by the next week, the men were then, somebody had a discussion with someone, and I remember standing in the center of the room, and the best man in the class walked over to me and extended his hand and said, "Miss Brown."
Brown later auditioned successfully for the prestigious School of American Ballet, where she was one of only 6 black students. Like many at the school, she hoped to be chosen eventually for a position with the New York City Ballet.
I very much wanted to be a member of New York City Ballet. I loved the atmosphere.
Exhausted from the strain of earning a living while she took classes, Brown left the school after a year. In 1955, another black student did join. In 1957, Dolores Brown was invited to join a newly created all-black ballet company, the New York Negro Ballet.
The New York Negro Ballet represented to me a proving of what we were really capable of doing, a breaking of a mold. The hope was that we were going to be the groundbreakers.
With funding from a wealthy patron, Brown and the company embarked on a debut tour that would take them to England, Scotland, and Wales.
Watch this arm, yeah, that it's not coming up and over your face.
Brown and a partner were chosen to perform the difficult Bluebird Pas de Deux from Sleeping Beauty, the only classical piece in the company's program. She feared the British audience would not accept blacks performing the revered European classic.
We postponed it, and finally the director said, "This is it, kids. You're dancing this pas de deux." I remember the curtain going up. I thought I was going to die. I'd never felt that way, ever going on stage before. I loved performing. I just thought they're just going to kill us for daring to do this. And the applause was so spontaneous and so big, we just rode on it.
The tour, which was to continue on to France, ended abruptly when the company's patron died.
We were told that there was no more money and we had to come home. It was like attending a wake. It was absolutely devastating. I thought, well, now I've got this repertoire under my belt. I'm not going to have a problem now auditioning. And I remember one day I was in class and just absolutely loving it. And one of the ballerinas from New York City Ballet was standing off to the side, and I was standing next to her. And she turned to me and said, "Who are you with now?" And I said, "Excuse me." And she said, "Well, who are you dancing with now?" And I just run in there from an office job downtown. For some strange reason, it was the first time in my life that I walked away saying, "What am I doing? Why am I doing this?" I went home. I got rid of all my practice clothes and said, "I'm an office worker. That's it. I'm not doing it anymore." I was so heartbroken because I realized that in that class, I was the only one on the front line who was not in a company.
In 1955, Raven Wilkinson had a celebrated American dance company, the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo. She was the first black woman hired to dance full-time in a major ballet company. But the director had asked her not to reveal her race.
She's very fair-skinned, but I knew she was black, and she had beautiful feet, and a wonderful port bras, and very lyrical, and she fit in quite beautifully.
I went to the South, I stayed in the hotels, I danced on the stage, and in that course of the time, I became a soloist. The director of Ballet Russe gave me the waltz and lace sylphide my second year in the company, and that was always my part. I did it through thick and thin whenever lace sylphide was playing, which was a lot, and I loved it.
Wilkinson and the company toured the United States and Canada by bus. One season, they traveled more than 19,000 miles, performing in 91 cities in 25 weeks.
It was tiring. You had to build up a certain endurance. Any company that travels like that and is so intimate day after day becomes a family. And I must say, we were very supportive. We had a wonderful morale and spirit.
The Ballet Russe introduced many Americans to ballet and first popularized the Christmas favorite, the Nutcracker. In small towns and big cities, the company regularly performed before capacity crowds.
I stood there in one theater and I could see the faces. And before I had to make the next move, I just looked out and I saw the most incredible expression on the people's faces of such joy. And I thought to myself, you know, this is a very special blessing to be able to stand here and be a part of something that moves other human beings.
For 2 years, the Ballet Russe ignored Southern segregation laws that made it illegal for Wilkinson to share the stage with white dancers or be with them in restaurants or hotels. By Wilkinson's third season, white backlash to civil rights protests posed a new threat.
The manager of the hotel came over to me and said that they'd asked my company manager if they had a Negro in the company, and he had said no. And he said, but they had gotten the black elevator operator, who was a woman, to identify me, and she thought I was black, a Negro at that time. And I said, well, yeah. And so they called a colored taxi, and I took a colored taxi and went to a colored motel. I think some people who were black felt that I was doing what was called passing. And if I felt I was going as a human being and an artist. is in the eye of the beholder. When someone asked me, "Are you colored? Are you Negro?" I said, yes. So that made a problem.
Wilkinson continued to tour with the Ballet Russe, but as racial tensions escalated, she was taken off the program in many southern towns. At times, she had to fly north until the company arrived in a safer location. In 1960, the company's ballet mistress spoke to Wilkinson about her career.
It was suggested that perhaps I'd come to the end of my time in Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo, and she put it this way: we couldn't have a black swan queen, and that I should get out and start a company of my own doing African dances. I had studied classical ballet. I'd given my life and love to it. She had seen it.
Exhausted, Wilkinson left the Ballet Russe. She was not invited to join another company and stopped dancing for several years. Finally, she too left America.
I felt very badly that I had to leave my country and go somewhere else to be a human being and an artist.
It comes as a shock to discover that the country, which is your birthplace and to which you owe your life and your identity, has not in its whole system of reality evolved any place for you. The disaffection, the demoralization,